Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Nedarim, Daf Yud Gimel. And as you can see, we'll be ending the parak. Baruch Hashem, ending the first parak of Kol Kinuyeh. And we're starting a little bit more than a third of the way down at the two dots of Ke'imra, Kedirim. And then we'll be learning another Mishnah. Now, we had said in our Mishnah, and what we've been speaking about really ad nauseum over the last many days is doing what's to be matfis, is to say I have a kikar over here, and I'm trying to accept a neder upon myself to change the status of this kikar into the status of something else. In our Mishnah that we had learned many blot ago, where is it? Our Mishnah that we had learned, oh, that's not even it. Was it yesterday's blot? Where is it? Here it is. The Mishnah that we learned on the bottom of Yud Amud Beis had said that if a person compares and associates their kikar or their corned beef with an imra, with a sheep, or kedirim, with a pen of animals, etc., we had said that hareze neder bekorban. So we're going to start with that nekuda here. Ki imra and kedirim, those all had the letter kaf. If you'll recall from our Mishnah, we had a machlokas between Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda as to whether or not the letter kaf was critical. We know that the letter kaf means like X. And when you say like X, that's really a very strong comparison. But if you don't have the kaf, maybe it's not that way. So this Mishnah, our Mishnah here says ki imra and kedirim. And the brisa that we're starting the Gemara with is divergent from our Mishnah. Tana, imra, le'imra, and ki-imra. All three languages, not only kaf languages, not only comparative languages with the letter kaf, but even without. And dirim, le'dirim, and kedirim. And those are the pens of an animal, even without the letter kaf. Eitzim, le'eitzim, ka'eitzim. Ishim, le'ishim, ke'ishim. All of these languages, mizbech, le'mizbech, ke'mizbech, hechal, le'hechal, ke'hechal, Yerushalayim, le'Yerushalayim, ke'Yerushalayim, kulan. In all of those cases, if you added to those cases, my kikar is like the dirim, or like the lidirim or kidirim, she'ochelach, that which I would potentially eat of yours, which could be yours. So then in those cases, we'd say asr, that the neder is binding and you cannot eat it. Lo'ochelach, but if I wouldn't have consumed your food, then mutter. The Mefarish over here, a third of the ways down, goes into the lumdus of this, a little bit of a difficult idea, but we're going to learn this Mefarish inside. Take a look at the Mefarish, a third of the way down. Dibur hamaschil, kulan she'ochelach. Dichi Amar, when a person says, quote, Ki'imra she'ochelach, like this sheep that I will eat of yours, Dami kiman de Amar ye'aser alai ma she'ochelach. That's similar to one saying that I am now forbidding that thing upon me. That's why when I say the language of she'ochelach, it becomes a neder. But the Mefarish continues, Aval Amar Ki'imra lo ochelach. But if I add in the word, like this sheep, I will not eat of your food, that's mutter. Demashma, what is the implication? Aval im ochelach lo yehe ki'imra umutter. But if in fact I were to have eaten your food, then it wouldn't be like an imra. In other words, if an imra is like me not eating your food, then if it's not an imra, then it's like me eating your food, and therefore the equation doesn't work and it's not considered a neder. Back in the Gemara, we just learned this brisa that we have more expansive languages that can be used in order to establish a neder, imra, le'imra, and ke'imra. And in regards to all of the various examples that our Mishnah expressed when we learned it on the bottom of Yud Amud Beis, and says the Gemara, man shaminan le, de lo shani le, and we should add in the word bain, de lo shani le, bain imra le imra ki imra. Who is a Tana who would agree with this idea? And we should know the answer to this based on our previous learning, because we already saw that the letter kaf is a machlokes as to whether or not it's a requirement. And says the Gemara, the answer is Rabbi Meir, by implication, and not by having an express mari makom, but by implication, it seems to be that the author of this brisa is Rav Meir. But if our Mishnah is like Rav Meir, then Ema Seifa, we have a problem. Because what did we just say in this brisa a couple of lines ago? We said, B'chulan, and in all cases, if you say lo ochelach mutter, that is not considered to be a neder if you use that language. But how can you say that the Mishnah is authored by Rav Meir if this is true? After all, v'hatznan, 2/3 of the way down on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. The Mishnah writes, and this Mishnah is the Mishnah that's just a few lines from now, but we're quoting it here out of context to ask a question on Rav Meir. What does that Mishnah say? In regards to a person who says lekorban lo ochelach, similar language, it says lo ochelach, there Rav Meir is oser. And what did Rabbi Abba say about this? Rabbi Abba nasa ke'omer lekorban yehe. When a person says lekorban, it's as though he said lekorban yehe, it should be like a korban, lefichach lo ochelach, and therefore it's lo ochelach, but it should be aser. So now we have a stira. According to the brisa that we started with today, and if our author is Rav Meir, then it seems to be that if a person says lo ochelach, then it would be mutter. That's not considered a neder. Yet this Mishnah, the Mishnah we're about to learn at the bottom of this page, but quoted again out of context here, it seems to say that it is going to be a neder. Says the Gemara, lo kasha hada amar lo leimra, hada amar leimra. One is to be says it is not like an imra, not like the sheep, and the other says that it is like the sheep. So there's no machlokas between Rav Meir, and we could therefore establish this brisa that's in the middle of Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, like the sheets of Rav Meir. Let's dig into the next Mishnah, 12 lines from the bottom. Ha'omer korban, ola, mincha, chatas, toda, shlamim. Any of these types of hektish korbanos or offerings, and you add in the language shani ochelach, that is going to be aser. And if you'll notice that none of these cases have the letter kaf. It doesn't say that this kikar is going to be aser ki ola, ki mincha, ki chatas, v'chule. Rabbi Yehuda Matir, Rabbi Yehuda says these are nothings. Because as you'll recall from yesterday, I think, that Rav Meir was of the opinion that without the letter kaf, nothing doing. When we were little kids, you have similes and metaphors. They were used under specific circumstances, and it has to have like or as. So without the word like, it's a zero. So he paskins like the fourth grade grammar teacher who teaches you about metaphors, similes, whichever. So the Gemara says without the letter kaf, Rav Meir says nothing doing. The Mishnah continues, if a person says ha korban, or ki korban, or korban. So then the Gemara says she'ochelach, then aser. Those are binding languages, but li korban lo ochelach Rav Meir oser. So there, even Rav Meir would say that is going to be oser. The Mishnah opens with the words katani. We learned in our Mishnah, and the next word should be removed because when we compare this quote from our Mishnah to our Mishnah, we will see that it's in fact not the same. So Tani, we have a Mishnah. What does it say in our Mishnah? Ha-korban ki korban she'ochelach aser. And that would imply stama, that would imply that the author of our Mishnah is Tana ki Reb Meir, the lo shanile, who doesn't distinguish between the lo shanile bein imra le-imra. He doesn't care if there's an imra, le-imra, or ke-imra. It doesn't matter. Reb Meir says that all of them are strong enough to generate a neder. But says the Gemara, if this Mishnah that's 10, 12 lines from the bottom on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, if this Mishnah is Rav Meir, then I don't understand. How can you say in this Mishnah that if a person says a korban she'ochelach aser ve'atanya modim chachamim l'Rabbi Yehuda, the chachamim who are arguing with Rabbi Yehuda, and this is not stated in the Gemara, but it means in this case Rav Meir. This chachamim is Rav Meir. So when it says modim chachamim l'Rabbi Yehuda, it means that Rav Meir agrees to Rabbi Yehuda. Ve'omer, two words, ha korban or v'ha ola or v'ha mincha or v'ha chatas, two separate words. Ha chat, all of these languages v'ha chatas, and he adds in the word she'ochelach she'mutter. That's not considered binding. When a person says ha korban, this korban, says the Gemara, why doesn't this work? Shelo nadar zeh ela b'chai korban. It sounds like this dramatic language of making a promise. We've seen this language throughout Shas, b'chai demar. We've seen these kinds of languages in the life of whatever. Says the Gemara. The Gemara makes an equivalence between the language of ha and the word chatas, two separate words, to dramatic, poetic type of language to accept a korban. And again, I will say this and probably many times throughout the Masechta, it's very hard for us to appreciate this in our parlance because we don't speak like this. I guess that in our way it would be like, by golly, is that like, by golly, I'll bring a korban. So like, does that work? What does the word ha mean here? The Gemara says it's a dramatic word that indicates. So therefore, we have a stira. We have a stira from our Mishnah and a stira over here from Rav Meir. So the Gemara responds on the top of Yud Gimel Amud Beis, lo kasha. And this is not a problem. And for those of us who try to keep halacha, we need to learn these halachos very well. Why? Because look at the distinction of the Gemara here. Ha de amar ha korban. If a person were to say the words ha korban when trying to accept upon themselves a neder, that's not binding. But the ha de amar ha korban, one word, you're done. That is binding. So according to this shita in the Gemara, this chakira, this distinction at the top of Yud Gimel Amud Beis, if a person accepts upon themselves a korban and they say ha korban, this korban, the language is too poetic, too dramatic, it's too neder, it's not neder oriented, it's just like promise oriented, but not in the way that we like it. It's kind of like bechai, the korban, whatever it is, and therefore that doesn't work. Huge nafkaminas. In my taima, because chai korban ka'amar, because when one says ha korban is two separate words, it's as though they are saying lechaye korban, which does not work. The Gemara continues with a brayso. Tani, what did we learn in our Mishnah actually? Le korban lo ochelach Reb Meir oser. We said in regards to a korban lo ochelach, I will not eat. And what does the Gemara say about that? The Reb Meir's oser. This is a problem. What did we learn about the shita of Reb Meir? Reb Meir doesn't allow us to make a backwards inference in regards to Nedarim. What is the question here? It says the Gemara, according to a previously learned shita of Reb Meir, we don't allow a person to say not this, and therefore we assume that. So how over here can a person say, "Le korban lo ochelach Reb Meir oser"? This korban, I will not eat your food. You're saying not, which means that it is in fact a neder. That should be against the rules. Amar Rabbi Abba, an answer that we saw previously. Nase ki omer le korban yehe. When a person says le korban, it is actually a positive frame of language. It's actually as though he said le korban yehe, that this really should be a korban. Lefichach lo ochelach, because this is a korban, I will not eat from you, and therefore the question of michlal lavat hashomei hein against Reb Meir doesn't even start. Let's learn the last Mishnah in the parak. Ha'omer lechavero, a person says to his friend, konam pi medaber imach, yadi osei imach, ragli mehalechas imach aser. A person says, I'm going to bring a konam, I'm going to bring a korban, based on my speech, based on my hands, based on my legs walking, that is considered binding. Says the Gemara, how can that be? Or minhu, we learned in a source in the Tanaim. Chomer b'shvuos mi b'nedarim, u'v'nedarim mi b'shvuos. We know that there's a stringency that applies to the world of shavuos, but that doesn't apply by nedarim. And the opposite is also true, that there's a chomer by nedarim that doesn't apply by shavuos. What's the chomer b'nedarim? We're a third of the way down. Ha-nedarim chalen al mitzvah kibirashus. A person can, in fact, make a neder even on a mitzvah. Masha'ein kain, which is not the case b'shvuos, because we've already learned the principle of ein shvua chal al shvua. So therefore, that's one difference in nedarim and shvuos. And what's v'chomer b'shvuos? What is the stringency of shavuos that doesn't apply by nedarim? Says the Gemara, shashvuos chalos al davar sheyesh bo mamish v'she'ein bo mamish. A shvua can be invoked whether or not the thing you're talking about has physical reality to it. In other words, there's a piece of meat sitting in front of you, or no, even if it's based on something that isn't a tangible item. Masha'ein kain b'nedarim, and that's not true by nedarim. Yet our Mishnah seems to be discussing this strange case that I'm accepting a korban on myself based on my ability to speak, based on my ability to move my hands. That's ein bo mamish. So says the Gemara, that's a problem. Amar Rav Yehuda, you're right. What is the case of our Mishnah? It must be be'omer ye'aser pila diburi, that I'm accepting X upon myself by me also not speaking. That's considered action. Or yadi l'ma'asem, or I won't use my hands to do a certain action, or ragli lehiluchan, or to limit my walking. Those are considered real. Dekanami, this is also implied. Dektani pi medaber imach, v'lokatani shani medaber imach, that my mouth will not speak. That's what our Mishnah says, and the Mishnah doesn't say shani medaber imach. So therefore, there's no contradiction over here between the Nedarim and Shavuos discussion. And when one has a restriction in their physical behavior, they can also accept upon themselves a korban. If a person says, I hereby accept this korban upon myself if I don't speak for the next hour, so then good to go. That's real. But if you say, I hereby accept a korban upon myself because I'm able to speak, that's less bein mamish. That's nothing. And that's how the parak ends. Hadron Allah kol kinuye baruch Hashem. We finished the first parak of Maseches, Nedarim Yiratzon. We should finish all of Shas together, and we should come back to this daf in 7.5 years. Wishing you all a beautiful night.